client access licenses to remote desktop sessions with Windows Server. Windows Server always requires client access licenses. If you have client devices, you always have to license the server itself and then every device. These are device CALs. And if you have a user CAL based model based on the users, this would be user CALs. There are two types of CALs with Windows Server. One is just to use the basic Windows Server functionality. The other one, that always requires the first one as well, is the so-called remote desktop. If you run Windows Server and you want to host a graphical interface for your employees or your partners or your sometimes even customers, you need to license every endpoint, either devices or users, with RDS, Remote Desktop Services CALs, client access licenses, in addition to just Windows CALs. On premises, it works this way. You have this user. For this user, you need Windows Server CAL and RDS CAL. Simple. If they want to use graphical interface, say you deploy Excel and they want to use Excel in a remote graphical interface, working from home, working from the road, working from location in Cyprus, with the server that's in the UK or in the United States, they need these two CALs, if that is your on-premises solution. Normally, this is not that difficult to explain. When it comes to Azure, it becomes a bit more interesting. There's no need to license Windows Server in Azure because you pay for it through Azure. You have an option as well to use your own licenses, bring them to Azure through Azure Hybrid Benefits, but the basic Azure model is, say if you're starting from scratch, you have no licenses, you're a startup, you decided, I'll go full on, cloud only, then just pay rental fee to Microsoft, that includes that license cost. And then the normal CALs, the Windows Server CALs in Azure, they're not required. That's a big difference in Azure. But when it comes to RDS CALs, that's why people get really confused with Azure. Because normal Windows CALs are not required. For some reason, there's a misconception that RDS CALs are not required either. Yes, they are. Two simultaneous connections to Windows Server are allowed for free, included in the license in Azure, when you are an administrator. But that has always been true on premises as well. If you only use remote administration mode on Windows Server and you don't serve any other workloads to users, you usually don't normally think about how do I license remote desktop services when you host some third-party or Microsoft software in a remote desktop in a server infrastructure in Azure. Do you need to pay for some sort of RDS CALs, RDS CALs in Azure? I don't really know what you're going to do if you don't want to buy any licenses, you want to just pay to Azure. I don't know if there's a solution to that. But I deal with companies sizes from 1,000 and plus. They have licenses, they have enterprise agreements. Can you use your own CALs in Azure? Yes, you can. And let me show you that. That's an FAQ on Azure itself. What it says is that if you have RDS CALs, RDS client access licenses, with active software assurance, you may use them at the same time on premises and in Azure. The main requirement here is they have to be covered with current software assurance, and then you can bring them to Azure and just use them, don't pay anything extra. If you're using the service provider's solution, somebody deployed it for you as a service provider, an outsourcer, and they resell you licenses as a part of a SPLA agreement. They may also do so. So RDS CALs is the answer just on top of that one, basically explaining if you can use RDS subscription access licenses in Azure. So users in Azure, if they want to use like a hosted Excel, hosted Word, hosted Office, or any other things, third-party Adobe something deployed in the Windows Server infrastructure, in a remote desktop scenario where you allow your users to actually use remote desktops, not just admins, you need to activate it. You need to enable the remote desktop role or terminal server role, if that's a more familiar term to you. And in that case, you do need the activation key, and you may use your own entitlement as long as that's covered with software assurance.